It had been resorts. Rohit grinned, pulling up a picture on his phone. A still, dark lake under a wall of pine trees. Found the perfect place. Not on any booking sites. Locals only. Ayan stared at the image longer than the others. The cold, quiet water. The forest pressing close. No crowds. No expectations. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning, Mira answered. If we don't go now, we'll never go. They didn't toast. They didn't make speeches. They just nodded in agreement that didn't need words. The scene ended with a single decision. We leave at sunrise. And the next morning, while the city was still half asleep, Pete drove until the paved road shrank to gravel and the phone signal dropped to nothing. The white SUV bumped over potholes as the pine forest thickened, trunks closing in like quiet witnesses. Ayan checked the offline map again, the screen faint in the dimming afternoon. It's here, he said, pointing at an unmarked side road, a narrow path of dirt tapering into trees. Mira frowned. Are you sure? There's nothing on the boards about this spot. That's the point. Rohit laughed from the back, shaking a packet of chips. Real camping, no tourists, no drunk college kids. Kavya looked out the window, eyes tracing the dark undergrowth. Or rangers, she murmured, half joking. The SUV turned off, crunching over dead branches. The lake finally appeared between the trees, flat and dark, reflecting the low, gray sky. Isolated, quiet. Ayan felt a small tug of unease deep in his belly. Perfect, he said, forcing a grin. We'll have the whole place to ourselves. They chose a small clearing a few meters from the lake's edge, where the ground was mostly flat and only partly invaded by roots. The orange dome tent took shape between them, poles snapping into place with familiar clicks. Rohit wrestled with a stubborn peg. This ground's like concrete. That's what happens when you camp somewhere that's not a manicured campsite, Ayan said, trying to sound seasoned. His hands shook a little from the cold. Or maybe from the silence. No distant cars, no voices, just wind through branches and the soft, constant lapping of water. Mira spread out sleeping bags inside the tent, lining them up in a neat row. Kavya stacked food boxes in the car, careful to keep anything scented locked away. Bears? Rohit asked. Not here, Kavya replied. Mostly boar, maybe a fox, if we're lucky. Still, when she shut the SUV's door, she looked around, as if expecting something to move in the tree line. Nothing did. The sun slipped lower, the sky bruising to a deeper gray. The clearing felt smaller than it had when they arrived. They found the fire pit already there. Stones arranged in a rough circle, charred wood at the center, a scattering of ash that the wind hadn't erased. Someone's been here recently, Mira said, poking the ash with a stick. This isn't old. Kavya crouched, inspecting. The wood was gray, but not rotten. Maybe earlier this season. See, Rohit said. Not that remote. Still, there were no other tents, no voices, no signs of people, no candy wrappers, no footprints in the soft dirt, no tire tracks besides their own. Just this fire ring, as if whoever used it had vanished cleanly into the forest. Ayan shrugged off the discomfort and started arranging fresh wood. He liked the idea of them being alone here, liked the cinematic isolation. But as he lit the kindling, he caught himself glancing at the tree line, imagining someone standing just beyond the shadow, watching the four of them pick up where others had left off. Later! As the light thinned and the temperature dropped, Ayan rummaged in the glove box for a spare flashlight. His fingers brushed something that wasn't plastic or metal. A small, battered notebook. He frowned and pulled it out. "Hey, this yours?" he called. Mira looked over from the campfire. No. It was a black notebook, similar to the one Kavya carried, but older and scuffed. A bent corner, pages swollen slightly as if they'd been damp. Kavya took it, scanning the first page. "There's a name," she said. "Anil Joshi. Gates from last year. Looks like camping notes." Rohit leaned closer. "Previous owner of the car?" They skimmed entries about trails, fishing spots, weather. Mundane, neat handwriting. Until near the back. Pages where the writing became hurried, lines slanting downward. Kavya read, quietly, her lips tightening. He writes about feeling watched. Footsteps outside his tent. Items moved. Rohit snorted. He was probably just high, but Ayan noticed the way his joke fell flat, swallowed whole by the darkening trees. Night dropped quickly, as if someone had turned off a dimmer. The forest became a wall of black columns, the lake a featureless void. The only light was their campfire, and a single lantern hanging from a low branch, pooling pale yellow on their faces. They ate in a tight circle. Every crack of twig beyond the fire's reach seemed too loud, every rustle too intentional. "Stop," Mira said when Rohit started imitating horror movie whispers. "This place is creepy enough." "It's just empty," Ayan said, though he felt it too. The sense of being at the center of a vast, listening silence. Kavya turned the notebook in her hands. "Last entry is from this lake." He noted the coordinates, same as ours. "What does it say?" Mira asked. Kavya hesitated. "I heard someone walking around camp. Again. Checked outside. No one. But there were more footprints than there should be." They all looked down at the dirt around the fire, without meaning to. Seeing their own overlapping prints, impossible to separate. The fire snapped. Somewhere, an owl called, long and low. It was close to midnight when the fire finally burned down to glowing embers. The air bit at their faces, fingers stiff in gloves. Ayan stood to stretch and nearly tripped over a shallow depression in the dirt. "Careful," Mira said, grabbing his arm. He looked down. It was a footprint, a hiking boot, similar size to his. He stepped back, tracing the soft impressions in the soil. They curved around the fire pit, toward the lake, then back toward the trees. "Those ours?" he asked. Rohit got cleaner, crossing over their earlier tracks, the edges still sharp despite the cold. Kavya's voice was thin. Count them. They tried, but it was like counting shadows. Still, Ayan couldn't shake the feeling. There were more footprints than 4 people should have made. They doused the fire with water from the lake, watching steam curl into the night. The lantern inside the tent created a soft orange glow. Outside, the forest immediately pressed closer. Inside the tent, they lay in a row, sleeping bags zipped up, shoulders touching. The fabric rustled whenever someone shifted. Okay, Rohit said into the dark, trying to sound breezy. Rules. No one reads any more of that journal tonight. Agreed, Mira said. Second rule, Kavya added. If anyone needs to pee, you wake someone. No solo trips. Ayan laughed, then cut off as they all heard it at once. A faint crunch outside. Deliberate, circling. Probably a fox, Rohit whispered quickly. The sound moved slowly around the tent. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. It stalked near Ayan's head. He held his breath, listening for snuffling, claws, anything animal. Instead, there was only the faintest of having already been awake. His eyes opened to dim orange tent light, Kavya's small flashlight lying between them, still on. Mira's breathing was uneven, as if she was pretending to be asleep. He turned his head slightly. Her eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. You hear it? She whispered. He held his breath. At first, nothing. Then a sound so faint he thought he might be imagining it. A whisper, just outside the tent wall. Not words, just the cadence of someone talking too quietly to be understood. Kavya's hand fanged his wrist in the dark. Her fingers were ice cold. There's no cell reception, she murmured. No one's out here. Rohit shifted, muttered something about stop messing around, but his voice shook. The whispering moved slowly along one side of the tent, like someone walking with their mouth close to the fabric. Ayan gripped the flashlight. He almost called out, almost unzipped the door, but something in him, old and animal, said, "Don't let them know you're listening." After a few endless minutes, the whispering faded into the wind. Morning came pale and colorless. Clouds hung low over the lake, muting V to grab his toiletries. When he opened the back, his stomach dropped. On the folded blanket was his toothbrush, placed neatly on top of the black notebook. He was certain he'd left it in his toiletry bag, zipped shut. "Did one of you move this?" Maybe you just... He trailed off, seeing Ayan's hand still wrapped around the zipper of the closed toiletry bag. The toothbrush and notebook shouldn't be there, yet they were. Like a small, deliberate arrangement. A reminder that someone or something had gone through their things while they slept. They sat in the car, with doors shut, the cold seeping in through metal. The forest, visible through windows, felt like an audience. "Let's just leave," Mira said. "We can find a proper campsite down the mountain." "No," Ayan replied, too quickly. "We came all this way. We're just spooking ourselves because of some guy's paranoid notes." Kavya flipped to the last pages of the journal. "He wrote about the same things we're experiencing," she said quietly. Footsteps. Whispering. Objects moved. That's pattern, not paranoia. Rohit rubbed his temples. What does he say at the end? They argued in circles. Leaving meant admitting they were scared of something that might not be real. Staying meant living with the possibility that it was. "It's one more night," Ayan insisted. "Daylight now, we can move camp closer to the lake, away from the trees." "Because the crazy notebook man said so?" Rohit snapped, then immediately softened. "Sorry. I don't want to be the guy who bails over weird noises." Mira looked at each of them, jaw clenched. "If anything else happens, we pack up and go. No discussion." "Deal," Ayan said. Kavya stared out at the clearing. "Fine, but no more pretending it's nothing. We stay alert. We notice everything." They moved the tent a few meters closer to the water, as if distance from the trees could protect them. The tree line remained unchanged, still, silent, indifferent. In the late afternoon, Ayan decided to take some photos, to prove later that it had all been harmless. He walked along the lake's curve, camera around his neck, the others within shouting distance at the camp. He snapped shots of the water, the trees, the tent, a small bright speck of orange against all the gray. Through the viewfinder, the world felt safer, contained. He zoomed in on the tree line behind the tent, adjusting focus. That's when he saw it. A human shape standing just inside the shadows between two pines. He froze. The figure was motionless, head slightly. They tried to leave before dark. It felt like the rational thing to do. They packed some gear, loaded half the supplies into the SUV, glancing constantly toward the trees. The engine started fine. The comfort of that familiar rumble eased something in Mira's shoulders. Ayan shifted into reverse, backed up along the rough path, and stopped. A falling tree blocked the narrow road. It hadn't been there yesterday. A thick pine trunk, fresh splinters pale against dark bark, lay across the track like a closed gate. "Storm?" Rohit said weakly. "There was no wind last night," Kavya murmured. "They got out, tried to push it, but it was too heavy. They had a small camp saw, but cutting it would take hours, maybe all night. We'll deal with it in the morning," Mira said finally. "Daylight, we're all tired. That's when accidents happen." The SUV's engine died. The silence rushed back in, full of things unsaid. They decided someone should stay awake in shifts. It felt childish and necessary at once. First watch was Rohit and Kavya, sitting by the dimly revived fire. The others tried to sleep in the tent, clothes still on. The lake was a black mirror, The tree line, a jagged silhouette. Think it was some hiker? Rohit asked, voice low. The person Ayan saw? If it was, why didn't they say anything? Kavya replied. Why move the toothbrush? Why the footprints? Rohit stared into the fire. Maybe they're just messed up. Later, Ayan and Mira took over. The temperature plunged. Their breath fogged in front of them. You believe me, right? About the figure? Ayan asked. Mira nodded, arms wrapped around herself. I believed you before that. They listened. The forest creaked and settled, but for a long time, nothing approached. The lack of movement was almost worse, like the world was holding its breath. Near dawn, just as the sky began to lighten from black to deep blue, Ayan blinked and realized he'd nodded off in his chair. His neck ached. The fire was mostly ash. Mira's head lolled to the side, eyes closed. He shivered and stood, intending to throw more wood on. But his foot nudged something hard. He looked down. A small stone, smooth, placed precisely in front of his boot. He turned slowly. A neat line of similar stones stretched from the tree line to the campfire, each one about a meter apart, forming a straight, careful path. They hadn't been there when he'd last looked. Mira, he whispered, his voice scraping. Wake up. She jerked awake, followed his gaze, and went still. The last stone in the lines by whoever had been rewriting their reality. One small movement That journal could have been his. Maybe he never left. Then why tell us not to go? Mira demanded, sawing furiously. Shouldn't he want us out of here? Rohit's voice trembled. Maybe he thinks it's worse if we move at the wrong time. Or maybe he's just crazy. Ayan didn't answer. He only sawed and pushed and grunted until the cut deepened and the trunk finally gave way. Together, they rolled part of it aside, opening a narrow but navigable gap. The moment the path cleared, the forest seemed to lean in, as if offended. A distant crack echoed from the direction of the lake, like ice splitting. They didn't speak as they drove. The white SUV lurched through the gap, branches scraping the sides like fingernails. The campsite shrank in the rear-view mirror, a spot of oil. They reached a crowded rest stop hours later. Cars, noise, fluorescent lights. It should have felt safe. Yet when Iwan stepped out, he caught himself glancing at the thin line of decorative trees by the parking lot, checking for footprints, for neat lines of stones. He saw nothing. But he knew, in the quiet spaces of his mind, that someone else might have found a small black notebook in their glove box one day and driven up a nameless mountain road, looking for a place to be alone.